Oh boy, hello everybody. Like I said, we're going to be talking about how to become a CG artist, or to be more precise, we're going to go over all of the roles that you will meet in a typical production pipeline for making a movie. So what's the agenda? First, I'm going to introduce myself and why am I here. Then we're going to cover what's a traditional filmmaking pipeline. We're going to talk about the roles in the industry. And after that, if you guys have any questions, I would be really happy to answer. So first, my name is Yordan. I'm a 3D artist. Like my colleague already mentioned, I work at Chaos. I create numerous visuals for tutorials, webinars, marketing videos, anything from modeling, VFX, animations, rigging. In other words, I'm a 3D generalist. Excuse me. So why am I here? I work at Chaos, which is a leader in creating software for visualizations. You might know us because one of our founders, Vlado, which is right here, won a technological Oscar for his implementation of V-Ray, which is a ray tracer. It's a ray tracing engine for rendering imagery. So where you can find our software everywhere from architecture, interior design, production, automotive, visual effects, if anybody has done any game cinematics, studios like Blur, etc. work with us, so we're pretty much everywhere. To mention a few of our partners, it goes from Autodesk, Trimble, Intel, NVIDIA, pretty much everybody. And some of our clients are huge studios from the architecture business, as well as movie making and design. So first, let's start with something fun. This is a little quiz that I like to do with everybody when I start a presentation. I don't know if you've seen any of those images, but my big question is, can anybody tell me which here is a render and which here is a photo? Okay, we have a few guesses. Yeah. Okay, do you think anything is, do you think any one of these is a photo? All of them are renders. All of them. Like, these are arts from a guy called Ian Spriggs. He focuses mainly on creating portraits, and he goes into a ton of detail. He has covered everything from sculpting, shading, lighting, texturing, compositing. So it's a guy that's pretty much all in one. Yep, like I said, pretty much everything here is a render, as you can see. And to showcase the depth of detail he goes into, here's a little showcase. Pretty cool. So let's take a look at how movies are made. Basically, it's a really big production pipeline, and there are a lot of roles involved. It can be the whole process can be broken down into 3 separate stages. It's pre-production, where you create idea. There's scripting, budgeting. You need to find finances. Of course, there's also casting for the roles, etc. The next thing is production. This is the stage where all the filming is made. It's all of the work with actors and etc. And the last one is post-production, where we apply visual effects, sound effects, editing, and post-production and compositing. So the last part is where the movie is put together. Now, the film production crew is actually pretty big. As you can see, this is pretty much all of the roles. They're everything from directors. Hang on. Okay, so from directors, camera, electric people. There's everything from construction for creating sets. A ton of people are dealing with makeup, costumes. There's assistant directors, pretty much everything. And right here in this little very corner is the post-production or visual effects people, so CG artists, basically. Now, this diagram is a bit misleading, because if we take a deeper look, we can actually take a look at the split of how many people work on each one of these roles. And let's take an example with Iron Man 3, which had about 3,000 people working on the whole movie in general. And as you can see, about 1/4 was in visual effects. So even though it is a very small role, it actually involves a lot of work and a lot of people and a lot of manpower that needs to be done when creating a movie. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the VFX pipeline, or what things look actually in practice. This is the whole pipeline. It starts with an idea, storyboard, then an animatic is created, then the design people come into place, they create layouts, then there's R&D done, then we go into the CG stuff, modeling, texturing, rigging, etc., all the way till we get to compositing, motion graphics, color corrections, until we get the actual final movie. In the next few slides, we're going to take a look at each one of those roles, because they can be very, very different. And basically, they're all on the spectrum from artistic to technical, but pretty much anyone can find a place in one of those roles. So let's start with the story. The first thing is to create the idea for your movie, whether you take a already created story or you come up with something on your own, but you need to figure out what are your characters, what's the interaction between them, what's the point of the movie, etc. Basically, you need to have a compelling story built and create a script for that. Then comes the storyboarding process, which is the first step where digital artists come in place, because it needs we need to create an animatic for that whole story, and this is done even for very small productions, even for 20-second commercials. There is a storyboard created with pretty much every one of the shots showcased in little drawings like this, so that all the people that get to work on that project from that point forward have a good idea and a good sense of direction where everything is going. So this is an example from Zootopia, or was it Zootropolis? I can't remember the name in English, but yeah. As you can see on the left, we have the animatic and like the storyboard, and on the right we have the actual shots created based on those animatics. And as you can see, the storyboard gives a very rough, but also a very good idea of what the movie will look like and what every one of the shots will look like. And based on that, people make decisions on what kind of resources they need to allocate and how many people do they need for certain tasks. Next is previs. This is where a lot of 3D artists come into play, and the idea is that you create this very rough pre-visualization of your movie, where everything is literally put together from scraps. As you can see, those are very rough renders. Some of them are made from the viewport, but let's take a come on, play. So here we're going to have a little example of what the previs looks compared to what is going on in the final renders. We have a few shots from Star Wars, from other big movies, where you can see how everything was rendered before it actually got into production and filming, so that everybody has a good sense of direction of where it was going. And of course, you can see the final product and how close the two are actually. Okay, then the next step is creating concept art. So a big role in creating an actual production is figuring out how everything will look and how everything will work. This is where concept artists come into play. We're talking about designers who will figure out what the costumes will be, what characters will look like, what their stuff like hair will be, what weapons will look like, etc. And there are a few different types of concept design actually and concept art. Of course, there's a general 3D concept art. There's a lot of people who create those little characters or environments or pretty much anything that gives that represents an idea which will then be developed into a very detailed piece for a movie or whatever its purpose is supposed to be. Of course, there's feature film concept art. Here, there's a lot of drawings and art done like this one. Basically, those are stuff like set designs. People are creating vast areas so that everybody has a sense of idea what the whole production will be taking place at and what the environment will look in those movies and films, etc. And again, the last thing that I'm going to mention is games concept art. Probably most of you have seen all of these. Like I said, this is the stage where people just figure out what the characters will look like, how they will function. This is based a lot on the story and also on how the characters and the environment will be interacting with one another. As you can see, there are decisions made about the proportions of the characters, their appearance. Of course, there's a lot of diagrams like this where people figure out the face features so that they fit the actual storyline. Because you probably can't make a very you probably can't have a silhouette like this having a role like this one, so you can have a heavy character trying to be a ninja, etc. So yeah, that's an important part. The last thing in concepting is the color scripts. Here, colorists will try to figure out what kind of tonality they're looking for each one of those shots that they need to create, and they will pick out colors that will enhance the visual experience of the people watching those shots. The idea is that with colors, you can communicate a certain mood or a certain feeling, and before the filming starts, you need to have a very good idea of what the actual film will look like and what each individual shot will be trying to communicate. Next thing, layout and production design. This is where people try to figure out what the set of each shot will look like. They start putting pieces together, and this is something that... So this is the place where the actual shots start to be put together with different props, etc., so that you actually can begin rendering something and starting to flesh out the environments and the actual shots for your movie. And as you can see here, pretty much everything is rendered out except for the dinosaurs, the real. I don't know if you've noticed. And like I said, yeah, everything is done. A lot of the things actually are done in CG, and the idea is that you need to, in this stage, you need to create your actual environments, and they need to be detailed and production ready. This involves a lot of modeling, texturing, etc., which we'll be taking a look after this. So, an important step is R&D, or research and development. When a movie is starting to be made, a lot of problems rise up. So, for example, you need to figure out how to create certain animations, you need to figure out how to create certain visuals. And there are easier and harder ways. You need to pick out what kind of software you're using, what kind of pipeline, etc., whether you'll be doing the animation in 3ds Max or maybe in Maya. It really depends. But yeah, this is very related to the tools. Sometimes there's a lot of custom scripting made just in this part. So let's have an example. We probably can recognize this image. This is from Interstellar. This is the black hole. And this is a really interesting render for the sole purpose that the team had actual physicists figure out how the light interacts when there is a massive body with a lot of mass and how it will curve the space-time around it. And you can say that that representation of black hole is probably quite accurate, or the most accurate that we will get for now, apart from actually taking a photo of it. The next part is 3D modeling. This is the stage where pretty much everybody creates, well, 3D modelers create each one of the props, characters, and anything in 3D space. They flesh them out. And again, there are a few different types of modeling, so there's something for everybody. The first thing is poly modeling. This is a simple process where you drag out polys and you create surfaces with them. And you use tools like cutting, extruding, mirroring objects, etc., so that you create a surface. This is very useful when you're creating something hard surface, like a car. It works really well with very well defined shapes. Like I said, anything mechanical, etc. The next thing is digital sculpting, and this is a completely different approach where you actually take a piece of digital clay and you mold it to the shape that you want. And it's a completely different approach. You can say that it is a lot more artistic and a lot less technical than actual poly modeling. Again, this is a completely different test. Usually in the production, you have different people doing the digital sculpting and doing the poly modeling for the simple reason that they require a very different mindset. And like I said, it becomes very useful when you're creating very organic shapes. The last approach is procedural modeling. This is probably the most technical way and technical approach. The idea here is that you actually, instead of building the object itself, you basically create a machine that will build those objects for you. So for example, in here, somebody took the time to script all of the logic behind creating this particular set of environment prop, and gave the ability to the artist to choose pretty much any kind of any type of the details that we have. So we can really quickly customize and create iterations of the same object in case you need to fill a huge environment with similar props, but actually have them look the same. Next part is texturing, and texturing is really important because this is the part where you actually start to flesh out the model, you start to give it color, you start to represent the materials that the model is being made of. And of course, as you know, there's a huge difference between how something like wood would interact with light and how something like paper will interact with light. And this is where all of those things are done. First, there are a few steps you need to figure out whether you need to create stylized or natural-looking textures. Then you gather references. Then you need to be accurate with colors. Then you start layering and figuring out basically the story of an object, whether it's been dragged to dirt or it's been into space or whatever. And then the actual process is getting texturing done. It can be done in a few ways. It can rely on scanned textures. So this is using stuff like photogrammetry to capture an actual object with its textures and just putting it into CG place. The next one is procedural. This is pretty much like procedural modeling. It relies on mathematical models to create textures. Things like Burcon noise or Perlin noise, if you heard of them, come into use here. And the last thing that you need to figure out is the level of detail. So it's really important that your textures will hold up on depending on how close your camera is to your objects. So here's a little example of texturing. This is done in Substance Painter. Basically, any kind of object that you take, you can create base colors for it, determine what kind of materials each part will be, and apply things like dirt, scratches, decals, etc., so that you actually create the story behind that object. And this is really important because this is the part which will decide whether your prop fits into your environment and in your movie and in your story, or it doesn't. Okay, we're moving to something more technical. Next is rigging. And rigging is the process of creating a skeleton for your characters or for pretty much any object that you need to be animated. It comes with a lot of technical knowledge and a lot of research, because you need to figure out how your characters will be moving, what their anatomy will be, and those are big parts of making the actual animation real. So here's a quick example of what rigging a character might look like. In this example, we've created bones which control how the body will bend and how it will be controlled using a few simple controls like twisting, rotating, etc. Of course, in some cases, you might want some exaggerated motions like the ones displayed here. They come really handy in more animation-looking kind of movies, like Zootopia, for example, because you need that exaggerated motion. But in more photorealistic things, more photorealistic productions, you might need a more robust approach and might want to keep things a bit more realistic. Again, if we're going a bit more advanced into the process, here's a really good representation of what happens when rigging and animating a character. First, a bone structure is created. It doesn't need to look like that. It just needs to represent the bone structure. Then there's a muscle system created and how it deforms the surface of the skin. And lastly, there's a skin layer applied, which puts everything together, and you have the final animation and your final model. Okay, next thing is FX and simulation. And this is a really cool part. Basically, this is where you blow up everything, or you break it, or you burn it, or you put it into water, whatever. It's just really cool. It comes to play in games a lot too. Pretty much all of the animations that you see when you're slashing something with a sword, or you're blowing stuff, or you're casting spells, it doesn't matter. Pretty much everything is done with FX and simulations. And there are a ton of approaches to simulations. There are rigid body simulations, soft body simulations. Then there are particle physics, particle simulations, etc., fluid dynamics. Most of the examples here are basically rigid bodies. Most of these are done with RelClone. Or if you're looking to be a bit more technical, you might look into a software like Houdini, which is starting to be way more used inside in the VFX industry. And again, these are probably particle simulations. Again, particles, and physics simulations, etc. Okay. Next part, this is another step in creating the characters. It's hair and grooming. And for a lot of productions, you need to create characters with fur or hair or anything, whether you're recreating a person or whether you're recreating an animal. And the process can be quite interesting because the tools are made in such a way that you actually groom the fur. You have little strands that represent the hair, and you literally tell them how to behave and which way do you want them to point, etc., to create the style of fur that you're looking for. Okay, this probably lighting and rendering. This is probably one of the more artistic parts of the VFX pipeline. And here we have people dealing only with lighting and actually forming how the shot will look like and the mood of the shot, etc. This can be a very interesting process because it very closely represents real-world lighting. So here we have a few examples from actual movies and how the lighting has been achieved. And as you can see, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of setup to actually get the lighting that you want in a real world scenario. But with CG, you can do it very easily for the simple reason that you have actual representations of the real life lights and you don't have any limitations. The only reason that you might need to limit yourself is so that you don't create something that is way out of proportion or that looks very unrealistic. So here's a quick example of creating a quick look depth of a character. As you can see, the lighting can very quickly change the mood of an image and change the readability of the character. And it is a really fun process where you really shape out each one of your scenes and each one of your shots. Okay, one of the last parts is compositing. So compositing is taking all of that we've talked so far and putting it into one shot and making it look like it's in place and not just stamped on top of everything else. So let's take a quick look of compositing a shot. As you can see, everything is done in green screen, and then all of the different render passes are applied. Of course, compositing is done for creating set extensions also, not just for the complete making of a shot. As you can see, you can take CG parts and just apply them on top of anything that you've done and basically shape the world that you want your characters to be in. Okay, here's another example. In this case, we've taken the animation from an actual actor and replaced it digitally with a CG character that has been modeled, sculpted, then groomed, rigged, etc. Okay, so what are the VFX roles? Basically, like I said, they lie on a really large spectrum. It's everything from very artistic roles like concept arting on lighting artists, all the way to very STEM-oriented fields like creating custom scripts, rigging characters, doing physical and particle simulations, etc. And pretty much everybody can find their place here because it's a really large spectrum. Of course, the main roles, like I said, everybody is an artist in this field. Then we have programmers. They are divided into, like those roles are divided into generalists or specialists. Depending on the size of your production, maybe you have more generalists because you need one person to take care of many roles. You might need one person to create models, texture them, create their rigs, animate them, etc. Or you might be working in a very huge production where each one of those roles will be very specialized and you will have a person creating only characters, person creating only props, and somebody who's creating only the textures. And okay, can we have sound for this? Great. Yeah, basically those are most of the roles. Actually, great. So those were all of the roles that you will encounter in a typical VFX production. And these are all the roles that you can be picking from. And here we have a VFX reel that will give you an idea of all the cool things that you can actually make.
Feel the rush of it, takes me over. Feel the pulse of it, pulls me under. Find the truth in it, it is primal. As we balance it, good and evil.
And yeah, I'd like to thank you for your patience and thanks for listening to my talk. Yeah, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer. Yep.
Čakaj, Lučo.
Hi. First of all, thank you for this incredible presentation. I was wondering, you seem like a person who has a lot of experience working in film. How would you suggest a complete newbie to enter the industry? Like, for example, I'm not even finished with 12th grade and I already want to drop in the industry. What can I do to sort of be more appealing to studios, and even how to look for studios?
Okay. So this is a tough question, and my first advice would be to get familiarized a little bit more with the different roles that I just presented, because they can be very different, and a few roles in the industry might not be a good fit for you, while others are much better. So first, I would say whether you should decide whether you want to be more on the artistic side or more on the technical side. This really depends on what kind of character you are, and from there on, my suggestion would be the same as the presenter before me. You should really put in quite a lot of work. The big thing is creating a portfolio, and it can be it doesn't have to be anything big, it doesn't have to be anything grandiose, but you need a few good images where you present the skill that you're applying with. So for example, if you're a concept artist, just try to figure out a few concepts. Start with creating a story, or you can actually remake concepts for games. People like that. Of course, you will get more traction if you're doing some kind of a remaster for something that's already known. So I had a few friends in the concept art industry that their most helpful pieces were creating their own versions of characters for Dune and for Diablo, etc. And that's how they got picked up in the industry. Of course, you need to refine your just technical skill in general. You need to be aware with the tools that you're working with. But yeah, it takes some time. But I'd say that just putting in some work and taking it one step at a time is a really good approach.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
More questions? I see no hands.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yordan Zarev, everybody.
Thank you.